Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah. Praise Yahuwah. I will call upon Yahuwah, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. Rise up, O Yahuwah. Let thine enemies be scattered. Let them that hate thee flee from before thee. Hallelujah. 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 Praise Yahuwah. I'd like to welcome everyone to Kodesh Nation and to our Shabbat class. Praise Yahuwah. Brothers and sisters, I have a lesson today. Praise Yah. And even as we call ourselves Kodesh Nation, praise Yah, this is a lesson just dealing with a matter of Kodeshah, a matter I've given a lot of thought to. Praise Yah. And it's something that I really pray that you pay attention to, follow along in the scriptures, even go back over them, pray, seek Yah, because this is something that you're probably not going to hear every day. Praise Yah. I know I don't. I haven't really seen a whole lot of lessons on this topic. Praise Yah. But nonetheless, the title of this lesson is, Are We Having Fun? Are we having fun? Praise Yah. And so the purpose of this lesson, brothers and sisters, is that we want to explore this concept of having fun and amusement, and basically what this culture has taught us. And we want to look into the scriptures, and we want to see, praise Yah, just how this thing really lines up in light of scripture, brothers and sisters, because just the whole idea of fun and entertainment and amusement is so deeply intertwined in our culture that we as Israelites, we come into this truth and we separate from, the major things like pagan holidays and the false doctrines that were taught to us in the Christian churches. But a lot of times we hang on to some things. A lot of times we hang on to things culturally that may not be pleasing to Yah. And, we need to hear about things. We need to be taught. Praise Yah. And so, brothers and sisters, as I said, the title of the lesson is, Are We Having Fun? Are we having fun? Praise Yah. Well, what is fun? What is fun? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you just a regular dictionary definition of fun, and then I'm going to give you the etymology of it, meaning that, what are the roots of it? Where does it come from? Praise Yah. Now, the definition of fun would be enjoyment, amusement, and lighthearted pleasure. So once again, enjoyment, amusement, and lighthearted pleasure. Okay, that's the definition. But as far as where it comes from, the etymology of it, the etymology is Middle English, and when they say Middle English, it's talking about over in Europe and over in England hundreds of years ago. They talk about Middle English many centuries ago, and it is said that this word comes from a word that is spelled F-O-N. Perhaps it's pronounced the same way, but the definition of the root of this, where we get it from, is the Middle English word for make a fool of or be a fool. Make a fool of or be a fool. That's the etymology. That's the root of it. Praise Yahuwah. Now, one of the definitions of the word fun is amusement. So there's a very close tie-in with fun and amusement. You've heard of amusement parks. or people go out for a night of amusement like that. But if we really look at this word amusement, we're going to break this down here. We're going to break this down. What I want to do, because amusement, it's a combination of two words, and muse, or musement. Now, is used as what's called a negative participle. And what that means is you put an A at the beginning of certain words, and it means the opposite of the word that you put it before. Two such examples would be amoral. If people are amoral, it means that they're not moral. They don't have morals. They don't have standards. They just live loose. They're amoral, or amoral. Or when we were in science, we studied some animals that were called asexual. Asexual, that they did what was called asexual reproduction. In other words, they would reproduce, but it wasn't sexual like mammals, like people or beasts and whatnot. But they would, maybe they would lay eggs, and the male would come and fertilize the eggs, but they weren't having sexual contact, so they called that asexual reproduction, meaning not sexual, or the amoral, meaning not moral. So if we want to know what amusement really is, then we need to look at this word muse. Praise Yah. So the word muse, and I'm going to give you a couple scriptural examples of this, all right? And in the Hebrew, the word is siach. Siach, for muse, the way it's used in the scriptures. And the definition of it is to put forth, to meditate, to study, and to ponder. So to put forth, meditate, study, ponder. In other words, to really think through what you're doing, really think about what you're doing. Now we're going to look at an example in the scriptures here. In Psalm 143. Psalm 143, we're going to look at a scriptural example of the Hebrew word for muse. Psalm 143 and verse 5. Now in the Hallelujah Scriptures it reads this way, I remembered the days of old, I meditated on all your works, I ponder on the work of your hands. Praise Yahuwah. And so, but in the King James, it uses the word muse. All right, in the King James, it uses the word muse, whereas it actually translates it here, where it says, I meditated on all your works, I ponder on the work of your hands. And so that's how the scriptures use that word for muse, which it translates as to meditate, to ponder, to think. Now, this is not talking about just casually thinking about something in passing like that. Like you pass by a sign, it may say Atlanta, Georgia, 300 miles, and you think about that. Oh, okay, it's a pretty great distance. And then that's it. It's just gone. You don't really think about that anymore. No, this is something that you're really thinking through. This is something that you're really pondering, really studying, thinking about like that. And so that's how the word muse is used, in the Hebrew scriptures. Praise Yah. And I want to show you another way it's used, and this is in the Brit Kadashah. All right, Luke chapter 3. Luke chapter 3. Now, of course, they use the Greek in the Brit Kadashah, not the Hebrew, but the Greek word for muse is dialogozomahi. Dialogozomahi in the Greek. All right, and the way it's defined is to bring together different reasons, to reckon up reasons, or just plain to reason. So when you're reasoning, then, it's not just passing thought, you're thinking through something. So to reason, how they would reason with one another in the scriptures. Praise Yah. But Luke chapter 3. Luke chapter 3. In verse 15, now this is concerning Yochanan the Immerser, so who is also called John the Baptist. But Yochanan the Immerser, Luke 3:15, it said, "But as the people were in expectation and all were reasoning in their hearts." Now I'm reading out of the Hallelujah Scriptures. In the King James it says they were musing in their hearts. Musing. So they were reasoning in their hearts about Yochanan, whether he was Hamashiach or not. Praise Yah. And so I wanted to give you a couple of just scriptural examples of what it means to muse. So to muse would be to reason, to think through, to ponder. And now we talked about the at the beginning of a word in the English language being a negative participle, meaning you put with a word and it means not. And so when you're engaging in amusement, then you're engaging in activity that you're not thinking. You're not reasoning. You're not really considering something. In other words, it's you've heard people talk about something just being mindless. Yeah, that was a pretty mindless thing to do. You know, somebody does something where it's obvious they didn't really think about what they did before doing it. You know, it was mindless like that. And so amusement, not thinking, not reasoning, not considering something, but just doing something. And really in this context, doing something because it feels good. If it feels good, do it. That's been really a part of this culture, especially since the 1960s, with the sexual revolution and the free love and the drug culture. And that really became a maxim of young people back then. And as these young people grew up, they stayed like that. And so, of course, their children are like that, and their children's children are like that. Praise Yah. This whole idea of if it feels good, do it. Don't really think it through. Don't really consider, what it is that's making you feel good. What it is that's giving you this good time. Don't really think about it. Just do it. If it feels good, do it. Praise Yah. And that's why in the American culture, in this modern time, amusement is I know it's at least a multi-billion-dollar industry, maybe in the trillions, but at least it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. You look at amusement parks, or you look at TV programs, or movies, or comedians, and just all of these things that could fit under the umbrella of amusement. Praise Yah. And this is what the Gentiles do. This is what the Gentiles like. They engage in all these pleasures and amusements, and they're not even thinking about what they're doing. They're not even thinking about what's going on around them. They don't even care. They just want to feel good. Amusement, not thinking. Praise Yah. In other words, a lot of people are looking for an escape. They may have had a hard work week and whatnot, and so they just go out on a night on the town, and they just go out and get drunk and get doped up on drugs, and fornicate, and just, they're not thinking about work. They're not thinking about family life. They're not thinking about any of that. They don't want to think. They want to feel. They want to have a good time. Just, I don't want to think about all that right now. I want to party. And see, that's the thing is, when you've been a part of that culture, then you know what that's talking about. I was deep in that culture myself. I think about my college days and how, during the week, if you're really doing what you're supposed to, it could be pretty intense. You go to class for at least an hour at a time. Sometimes you're in classes that are 3 hours long, and sometimes you have to study for hours upon hours, and it can be pretty intense. And so college is a very well-known environment college campuses, there's a very well-known environment in this culture where people are looking for an escape. And so people, they get into all that, and when they're not in class, hey, it's time to let loose. It's time to put our minds on the shelf and just let loose. And that's what goes on. That's what people do. I saw people that, I was in a fraternity, and some people were actually able to do that. There was a man in my fraternity. He was a few years older than me, and this man made A's in school. He'd do real well in school and he'd study, but then when he put his stuff away, he let loose. And he was drunk about half the time I'd see him. He would get high on drugs, but apparently he was able to balance his school life and his party life, but most people aren't able to do that. Most people, that they get into that party lifestyle and it destroys their grades. I was one of them. I had above 3-point, grade point average coming in college in my first year, and I got into fraternity, and my grades took a nosedive. And that's how it is with a lot of students, is that they just put their minds on the shelf and let loose, when they get out of just the intensity of the classes and college and all of that. Praise Yahuwah. And so that's the whole idea. That's the whole idea behind amusement and fun. Or we talk about how something is funny. Something's funny. Well, if something's funny, it's something that makes us laugh. Praise Yah. And the scriptures talk about laughter, but we have to understand that there's a good laughter and then there's a bad laughter. Not all laughter is the same. And see, we're a set apart people. We can't be like the Christian churches where, we want to justify everything that we do. And so we find something in the Bible that relates to what we're doing. We're laughing over the most foolish stuff. And then when somebody contends with you, you say, a merry heart does good like a medicine. You want to apply that to anything and everything. Praise Yahuwah. But see, if you know the scriptures, you see that there's got to be a separation. And there's a reason. There's a reason why the heathens do what they do, but then there's a reason why Yah's people do, what we do. Praise Yahuwah. And so, brothers and sisters, praise Yah, what I want to do next, because we're talking about the root word of fun being the root meaning to be foolish or to make a fool of. And of course, that ties into the word folly. All right. Now, we've talked about folly before, and I want to go into it once again, because we can never talk about it too much, because folly is so intertwined in this culture. It really is. It's just amusement, folly. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. People love it. People are drunk off of folly, amusement, foolishness, in this culture. Now, folly, the Hebrew word for folly that we're talking about here is evaleth. Evaleth. Okay, and so the definition of that would be like foolishness, folly, or silliness. Now, the Hebrew scriptures use folly in two major ways. Okay, there's another Hebrew word for folly, and it's a little different. It doesn't necessarily mean like foolishness or silliness, but it just means like just mindlessness, doing something just completely mindless, where it would talk about like for example, Shechem, that son of Hamor, that man who took Dinah, Yaakov's daughter, and he took her virginity from her, and how they said that that this man, he wrought folly. He did something really stupid that could have got him killed, and that did get him killed like that. And so that kind of folly like that, or it talks about the virgin, or not virgin, but the young girl who is found without the tokens of her virginity, and how they bring her out and they stone her with stones because she wrought folly in Yashraal. She did something very foolish. She did something that could bring serious consequences upon her. And so there's that kind of folly, where you're just doing something completely mindless. But this one's a little different that we're talking about here. The Evileth. All right? This folly we're talking about here. This is the foolishness. This is the silliness and whatnot. And this is what I'm talking about, as far as that this culture is drunk off of, and the remnants thereof seem to remain even amongst Yah's people. In other words, we're not separating ourselves from this thing, and that's why it needs to be taught. That's why it needs to be. That's why it needs to be discussed. Praise Yah. Now, Proverbs 15. Proverbs 15. As I said before, there has to be separation. We are a separate people. We're a set-apart people. And there has to be a separation between how we conduct ourselves and how the Gentiles conduct themselves, how the heathen conduct themselves. Now, Proverbs 15:21 says, "Folly is joy to one lacking heart, but a man of understanding walks straight." Folly is joy to one lacking heart. Now, in the King James, it says, "Folly is joy to him who is destitute of wisdom." Folly is joy to him that is destitute of wisdom. In other words, if you don't have any wisdom, if you don't have any wisdom, you don't fear Yah, because the fear of Yah is the beginning of wisdom. But if you have the fear of Yah, and therefore if you have wisdom, then you will be able to differentiate between true joy that Yah wants us to have and folly that Yah wants us to have nothing to do with. But you have to have wisdom. And you have to have the fear of Yah in order to have that wisdom. If not, you will not be able to tell the difference. Anything that feels good, anything that makes you laugh, would just be okay with you. Why? Because you're not thinking about it. You're not considering what you're doing. You're just doing it because it feels good. Praise Yahuwah. But folly is joy to him, to one lacking heart, or to him that is destitute of wisdom. There is a difference. Praise Yahuwah. Now we're going to go through some more Proverbs dealing with folly. We have to understand that the scriptures do not say one good thing about folly. It really doesn't. And like I said, it is so pervasive in this culture that it's infected, even the Christian churches or the whatever movement you want to talk about, Hebrew Israelites, wherever you go. I mean, you're going to see this amongst people that are supposed to be Yah's people. Praise Yah. But because, we're not unanimous on this, because, some people are more accepting of it than others, then it remains. It remains, and it's one of those spots that needs to be scrubbed out. It's one of those wrinkles that needs to be ironed out. Praise Yahuwah. That's why I'm teaching this. So Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14, verse 18. It says, "The simple inherit folly, but the clever are crowned with knowledge." Praise Yah. The simple inherit folly, but the clever are crowned with knowledge. Now think about this. Why do the simple inherit folly? Well, one of the reasons is because the Proverbs also tell us that the simple believe every word. Simple people just don't think. They don't think for themselves. They don't think things through. Praise Yah. But they just do things and without thinking. And so when you just do things that make you feel good or make you laugh and you don't really think through what you're doing, then you'll inherit folly. That'll be your inheritance. It won't be knowledge, wisdom, understanding like the clever. That's what he'll inherit. Why? Because he's seeking for it. He thinks through what he's doing. But the simple will inherit folly. Now, Proverbs 18. Proverbs 18. "He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him." Now, why is it folly and shame to one who answers a matter before he hears it? Because that if this same person knew of the matter, that this person could know the truth of the matter. This person could know the right judgment of a matter, but it's more important for this person to speak than it is for them to have the truth, or for them to have right judgment. It's like when you're in a conversation with somebody and they interrupt you in your talk, that it's obvious that they're not hearing you out, but they're waiting for their opportunity to speak. And so that is why it is folly and shame if you answer a matter before you hear it. In other words, that the fool doesn't think about that. He's not thinking that through. He's not considering that, wow, I could really have clarity on this matter if I really hear it first, if I really understand first, then rebuke, like Sirach says. But instead, nope, I got to say something. I got to give my answer. See, I've heard it said before that a wise man speaks because he has something to say. A fool speaks because he has to say something. That's the difference. Praise Yahuwah. Now, Proverbs 26. Proverbs 26. Verses 4 and 5, it says, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, lest you also become like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he become wise in his own eyes." So in other words, I mean, this is like a Hebrew idiom. It's just another way of saying that you can't win with a fool. Just either way you go, you just can't win dealing with a fool. That's why the scripture says, go from the presence of a foolish man when you perceive not in him the words of knowledge, the lips of knowledge. Best thing to do is get away from somebody when you perceive that they are a fool. Because a conversation you have with such a person will just do you no good. Praise Yah. All right, Proverbs 17. Proverbs 17. Unless we think that this is something that is a light matter, something that, it's not that big of a deal. All right, listen to what this proverb says. This is heavy here. This is heavy. Proverbs 17. Proverbs 17, verse 12. It says, "Let a bereaved bear meet a man rather than a fool in his folly." Did you hear that? A bereaved bear. It's like a mother bear who gets one of her cubs stolen from her. Let a bereaved bear meet a man rather than a fool in his folly. In other words, that man is going to be better off meeting that mother bear robbed of her whelps than he is by meeting that fool. Because that mother bear robbed of her whelps, I mean, she can destroy that man's physical body. She can kill that man. But I mean, that man meeting a fool in his folly, and that spirit gets on him, and he gets folly in him, and he becomes foolish, that could destroy his soul. That's how heavy this thing is, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahuwah, because there really is a spirit behind this thing that we've got to be aware of. And it's not a good spirit either. It's not Yah's spirit. All right, Proverbs 26. And it's a spirit that is very hard to shake. It really is. Praise Yah. I mean, and I'm going to bring this out in this verse here in Proverbs 26. Proverbs 26, verse 11 says, "As a dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool repeats his folly." Praise Yah. As a dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. In other words, it's hard to get folly out of somebody once they get it in them like that. And somebody, they can hear a word, they can hear the scriptures, and just go right back into it. Praise Yah. It's like a dog returning to its vomit, his own vomit. So a fool repeats his his folly. Praise Yah. So I brought all that out. I brought all that out just to show that, the scriptures do not speak anything positive about folly. It does not. Praise Yah. And we see that, and we're going to see more of it later. Okay, let me just hold off on that. I'm going to bring that in a little later. But we talk about laughter. Now I mentioned that verse earlier. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine. So what could be wrong with laughter? What could be wrong with it? We grew up, and that's one of the things we did that just made us feel good. Just growing up as children, how we would laugh and how we play and how, it just make us feel good. So what can be wrong with that? We see Yah's people rejoicing. We see even exhortations to rejoice. Praise Yah. See, in Proverbs 17:22, the verse that I had quoted, as I read it from the Hallelujah Scriptures, it says, a rejoicing heart causes good healing, but a stricken spirit dries the bones. So it says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, King James. But a rejoicing heart causes good healing, but a stricken spirit dries the bones. But see, the reason why we cannot apply this scripture to anything and everything that we're laughing at, or that we consider fun or funny, is this reason here. All right, Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14. Proverbs 14, verse 13. Even in laughter, the heart is in pain, and the end of that joy is heaviness. So this is not the rejoicing that brings healing that we read about in Proverbs chapter 17, where the rejoicing heart, it brings healing, but a stricken spirit dries the bones. Praise Yah. But that's not the same thing as this. See, this is the folly laughter. This is the heathen laughter, the worldly laughter. That's why you see people that are comedians. And you see people that they make people laugh. They make people fall out laughing, and they laugh themselves. And you would think, man, these are some of the happiest people in the world. But a lot of these people are depressed. Take drugs because they're so depressed, because they get that laughter high and then they come right back down. And the end of that joy is heaviness, and they're heavy. And so what do they do for their heaviness? Snort cocaine, take some kind of drug, something to just pump them up like that. And so that shows that the joy of Yah is not their strength, because that's not the joy of Yah that they have. It's a cheap substitute that Hasatan has tricked him with and tricked the heathen with. Praise Yahuwah. So, brothers and sisters, praise Yah. I want to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 7. This is really powerful too. Ecclesiastes 7. See, we have to understand that as far as we have to be honest about the influence that our culture has had on us. Because according to our culture, it's like if you're not walking around, smiling and, just laughing part of the time, something's wrong with you. They kind of see that as, wow, he must have a stricken spirit that dries the bones. If you're sober, you don't smile a lot, you don't laugh a lot, you seem pretty serious. That is seen as a negative thing in modern American culture. It used to not be now. It used to not be. And I know America has never been perfect, but there was a time when people in America were more rooted in the Bible. Now, I say the Bible, as opposed to, Scripture, that anything from Genesis to Malachi, anything from Genesis to Revelation is Bible. But we talk about the Scriptures, we're talking about thus saith Yah. Praise Yah. But, they were more biblically oriented at one time. And if you could even look at photographs taken in the early 1900s, in the 1800s, and whatnot, and even paintings made of even Americans or European people, and how these people were sober when they took these pictures, when they were painted, or when they had pictures taken of them. They were very sober. You know, it wasn't a matter of, hey, say cheese. I mean, they just didn't do that back then. But today, it's like, if you're not like that, people consider something wrong with you. But I want to read this in Ecclesiastes, all right? Once again, the title of this lesson is, Are We Having Fun? Are we having fun? Praise Yah. So far, we've defined what fun is. We've seen the etymology of it. We've seen the tie-in of it with foolishness, folly. We see the scripture has nothing good to say about folly. And now we're dealing with laughter, and we're beginning to see that there's two kinds of laughter. There's two kinds of joy. Yes, Yah wants us to have joy. Praise Yahuwah. Joy is one of the byproducts of having the Ruach. Praise Yahuwah. Because even Daud, we see how much he rejoiced and exhorted us to rejoice. But when we're exhorted to rejoice, we need to know what the scriptures is talking about and what it's not talking about. Now, Ecclesiastes 7. A name is better than precious oil in the day of death than the day of one's birth. So other Bibles say a good name, better than precious ointment. Now verse 2, it is better to go to the house of mourning than go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living take it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the face the heart becomes better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of rejoicing. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of a fool. This too is futile. Praise Yah. So we're going to go through this here. Praise Yah. Now, better to go to the house of mourning than the house of feasting. Sorrow is better than laughter. By the sadness of the face, the heart becomes better. See, this is talking about really unearthing that true joy that comes from the Ruach. Praise Yahuwah. That, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. Praise Yah. Whereas the folly, you can have that at any time. There's no sowing and reaping with that. Praise Yah. But you could have folly anytime. And that's the laughter it's talking about here, where it says, sorrow is better than laughter. Praise Yah. You have people that have made these modern day JC movies, and they try to make him where he's this kind of smiling and laughing and kind of playing around with his disciples and all that. Because, they want to make him more personable. And they want to just say, well, we believe he laughed. We believe that he, this. In other words, they're saying we believe he was more like us, is what they're saying. See, Yah said, you thought I was altogether such a one as yourself. Yeshayahu 53 says that Yahushua was a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. I mean, when he came down here, it's like, it was a serious time. He had a serious mission. There wasn't anything funny about it. Praise Yah. But, this is from the perspective of Yah. This is from the perspective of Yah, because Yah wants us to have the real thing. Praise Yah. He doesn't want us to have a cheap substitute. He wants us to have the real thing. But we live in a culture. We live in a culture that is in the house of rejoicing. And they want to be in the house of rejoicing all the time. This country is on the brink of destruction. It's on the brink of just being destroyed by enemies that Yah himself has raised up and armed. We're talking like Russia, China, the Arab nations, people even on this side of the world too, Cuba. places like that. People have had dreams, visions, revelations showing about how this country is going to get attacked by these people. And it's going to be when we least expect it. Why? Because everybody wants to be in the house of rejoicing. Even the sports and entertainment, all that is, and the people at the top that push sports and entertainment, they know this. So it's not like everybody's just deceived and they don't realize it. The people at the top know this, that stuff is to distract the American people from what's really going on. Distract the American people with amusements, fun, entertainment, all of these sporting events, all of these, movies, and just just to distract the American people with amusements. Why? So they don't think. So they don't think about what's going on. Because if they thought about what's going on, they would be in the house of mourning. They would be mourning and weeping and crying out to Yah for mercy that he does not destroy this country, because we have basically stuck our finger in Yah's face with some of the things that especially some of the things that have been brought in the past 10, 20 years and whatnot. I mean, we have just cast the Torah of Yah behind us altogether. At least 50, 60 years ago, people were more rooted in Christianity, and there was like a partial adherence to some of Yah's laws and whatnot. But now, I mean, it's just an attempt to thrust it all away. People talk about pedophiles getting their rights. People talk about bestiality folks getting their rights. I mean, they want to cast it all away. And so this country really does need to be in the house of mourning and not in the house of feasting right now. See, Yaakov said, be afflicted and weep and mourn. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to heaviness. Why? Because it was the wrong kind of laughter. It was the wrong kind of joy. Praise Yah. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of Yah, that he may lift you up. And see, what happens, praise Yah, what happens when you humble yourself under the hand of Yah, and when he lifts you up, what happens? What does it look like? Let me show you an example of this. Psalm 126. Psalm 126. See, Yaakov was not saying don't ever have joy, but what did he say? He said, count it all joy when what? Count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations. Praise Yah. So he was teaching like Yahushua taught. Yahushua taught us to leap for joy. Praise Yah. But he said, Baruch are you, and men shall hate you and revile you, separate you from their company for my name's sake. Rejoice ye in that day and leap for joy. Praise Yah, for that's the same way that the Nevi'im, the prophets, were treated. Praise Yah. Rejoice that you're in the same class with them, and you know how great they were in the sight of Yah. Praise Yah. Psalm 126. It says, when Yahuwah turns back the captivity of Sion, we shall be like dreamers. Then our mouth shall be filled with laughter, and our tongue with singing. And they shall say among the Gentiles, Yahuwah has done greatness for them. Yahuwah shall do greatness for us, and we shall be glad. Turn back our captivity, O Yahuwah, like the streams in the south. Those sowing in tears shall reap with songs of joy. He who goes on and weeps, bearing seed for sowing, shall indeed come in with rejoicing, bearing his sheaves. See, that's what Yah ultimately wants us to have. Praise Yah. He wants us to have the real deal. He wants us to have that true joy of Yahuwah that is your strength. Praise Yahuwah. And so that's where, the scriptures give us many exhortations to rejoice, but it also tells us when to rejoice. Praise Yah. But see, that's tough for us. It's tough for us because it goes against our flesh. It's tough for us because we have to really press in order to get the true joy of Yahuwah. When we have adverse circumstances, we don't feel like rejoicing. When people are coming against us, we don't feel like leaping for joy. But I tell you what, when we do it, praise Yah, that's when praise Yah, Yah will reward you with that true joy. If you've ever experienced that, If you've ever just, you had people coming against you, you had bad things happening, but you just decided to take your focus off of that, praise Yahuwah, and put your focus on Yah and just praise Him and thank Him and rejoice, praise Yahuwah. See, that's when you can experience the power of the Ruach on a level that you haven't experienced it before. Praise Yahuwah. When you can do that, and when you can do that consistently, that's when you can really tap into the power of the Ruach. Praise Yahuwah. And the end of that joy is not heaviness. Praise Yahuwah, because that's an eternal joy. Daud said, in thy presence there is fullness of joy. At thy right hand are pleasures evermore. We could experience that at any time in the Ruach. Praise Yahuwah, but it takes work. It takes work because we've got to bring this flesh off the throne. Praise Yahuwah. It doesn't take any work whatsoever to have the worldly kind of rejoicing. Praise Yahuwah. No work, because that's natural to the flesh. It's just so easy. We don't have to pay any kind of price for that. Praise Yah. That's why it is a cheap substitute, brothers and sisters. So don't get me wrong. I'm not here talking like it's bad to laugh or it's bad to have joy. No, not at all. But we've got to set what we do apart from what the heathen do and what many of us still do. Praise Yahuwah. So I want to show you a couple of other verses here. It's actually out of the Apocrypha. I'm going to read a couple verses in Sirach. We're dealing with laughter here. We're dealing with having fun. Having fun. We might as well call it what it is and say having folly. Having folly. So can you have folly and can you have wisdom at the same time? Think about that. Can you have folly and can you have wisdom at the same time? Now, Sirach chapter 21. Chapter 21. Sirach 21. Sirach 21 says, a fool lifts up his voice with laughter, but a wise man scarcely smiles a little. That's what Sirach says now. This is a man who had a lot of wisdom, like Shlomo. If you scarcely smile a little in this modern time and in this culture, people think something's wrong with you. Man, what's wrong with him? He barely ever smiles. That's what it means by scarcely smiles. And when he does, it's a little. Praise Yah. But the fool, it says, he lifts up his voice with laughter. In other words, that characterizes the fool. He does that all the time. Praise Yah. Also, Sirach 19. Sirach 19, verses 29 and 30. See, this is why I believe that people were more sober in times past, because people were more, that they were more well read in the scriptures and more well read even on this subject. But Sirach 19, verses 29 and 30, a man may be known by his look, and one that has understanding by his countenance when you meet him. A man's attire, excessive laughter, and gait show what he is. Gait means gaiety. Gaiety. Talks about having gay clothing, like that. Just having just real flamboyant clothing that just draws attention to him, like that. And it says gayet, and that's where we get the name gay from. And that's why it's error to call sodomites gay. Oh, they're gay people. He's gay. No, they're not gay, because gay means happy. A lot of those people aren't happy, like that. A lot of those people are miserable. They'd like for you to think that they're happy. And so that's that's what gay means in its purest sense. It just means happy, like that. But it says a man's attire, excessive laughter, and gait show what he is. In other words, this shows a defect in this man's character. The excessive laughter, you see. So it's very important that we make this differentiation, because we are a set-apart people. We're supposed to be set apart from the world, set apart from sin, set apart from things that Yah is not pleased with. Praise Yahuwah. Now, we've talked about wisdom and folly in the past, but I want to show you a comparison that is very powerful, brothers and sisters. A comparison that is very powerful. Now, Ecclesiastes, not Ecclesiasticus, but Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 12 and 13. It says, "And I turned myself to look at wisdom and madness and folly, for what could the man do who comes after the sovereign but what already has been done? Then I saw that wisdom is better than folly, as light is better than darkness." Wow, what a comparison. Wisdom is better than folly. Make sure I get this right. As light is better than darkness. King James, it says, "Wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness." So what's the difference between light and darkness? Night and day. You know, I mean, no pun intended, but I mean, it's the biggest distance you could think of. Light and darkness. Two probably the most opposite concepts in human reality is the difference between light and darkness. But see, that's the same with the difference between wisdom and folly. And so you cannot have light and darkness at the same time. They're just two polar opposites. And you cannot have wisdom and folly at the same time. And so because we cannot have wisdom and folly at the same time, that's why we really have to muse. Get away from amusement. Get away from not thinking. Get away from not considering what we're doing. But we really have to think about things that make us laugh. Things that even give us joy. We have to prove all things and hold fast that which is good. We have to think these things through. And see, when we think these things through, in light of the scriptures, in light of the wisdom of Yah, you see, then we can make better decisions. We can know that what we're doing is pleasing unto Yah. Praise Yah. Because we don't want to be mindless. The heathens are mindless. They don't think. They don't think. Praise Yah. And see, that's where and the powers that be know that. The powers that be know that the average person out there does not think for themselves. The average person out there does not use their mind and does not engage in critical thinking. That's why TV advertising is so powerful. Because they know people don't think for themselves. We're going to do their thinking for them. People don't consider what we're doing. People don't consider that when we have a beer commercial and we have some shapely woman shake her behind and her breasts and her flowing hair, they don't consider that we are making a mental connection in that person with that woman and that beer, and they're going to drink more of our beer because of it. And people don't think, when they're looking at stuff like that, oh, hey, I like that. And they don't even wonder why that, man, I want to go get me a beer now. Because they know you don't think for yourself, so we're going to make those connections for you. Praise God. That's why they spend millions of dollars on TV advertising like that and all that imagery to manipulate people that don't think for themselves. We look at the entertainment industry, and we know that the entertainment industry is nothing but indoctrination. It's far beyond entertainment. They definitely have an agenda, even behind the entertainment industry. Why? Why do they have that agenda? Why don't they teach their agendas in the schools as openly as they do in the entertainment industry? Now, they do teach it, they do teach it in a way in schools, but they have to be more covert in the schools. Why? Because when you're in school, that you do think for yourself. You do exercise critical thinking when you're in school. But when you're not in school, when you're not at work, when you're not in your everyday busy activity, and you go home and you kick back and relax, and you just want some amusement. You just want to relax, feel good, and you don't want to really think of anything. That's when the edutainment comes in. The education that is masquerading itself as entertainment. You think that, hey, this is a funny show, and you're being indoctrinated the whole time. Why? Because it's amusement. You're not thinking critically, and they're just pouring their message into you. The whole time you're looking at that funny show, watching that funny show, looking at that funny movie, and the whole time you're being indoctrinated. Why? Because they know it's amusement for you. You're not thinking like if you're in school. Not thinking. Praise Yahuwah. So, and that's why we're talking about this. That's why we're talking about this today, because if there's anybody who needs to be thinking for themselves, it's Yah's people. Praise Yahuwah. If there's anybody who needs to be thinking critically about what we do in this present evil world, it's Yah's people. Why? Because we're awakened. We're awakened to this madness. We're awakened to what's going on. And we're responsible for helping wake up other people. So if anybody needs to think critically about what they do, it's us. Now, Proverbs 15. Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs 15. So we see that wisdom excels folly as far as light is darkness. Can't have wisdom and folly at the same time. Praise Yah. But it's like, the question has to pop up, why do we hang on to it? We may even know what some of the scriptures say, but why do we hang on to it? Praise Yah. And I believe that this verse here gives us some insight into that. In Proverbs 15, in verse 14, it says, the heart of the understanding one seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on folly. Let me say that again. The heart of the understanding one seeks knowledge, but the mouth of fools feeds on folly. See, if we feed on folly, what we sow, what we reap is what we sow. If we sow folly into us, you know what? Folly is going to come out of us. We watch all this folly on TV, internet, all that purposefully now. Praise Yah. That is the fruit that we are going to reap. And see, we're supposed to be wise people. We're not supposed to be fools. The mouth of fools feeds on folly. Praise Yahuwah. We're not to feed on folly. We seek knowledge. We seek wisdom. We seek understanding. We know that we need to feed on things that are going to build us up, whether it be spiritually, intellectually, financially. Praise Yahuwah. And we know Hashatan's agenda is to do the opposite. He wants to tear us down spiritually, or intellectually, financially, whatever the case may be. And see, we can't let that happen. We have to be wise. We have to be discerning. Praise Yahuwah. Praise Yah. Now, brothers and sisters, what I want to do is I want to give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. I've been talking, this may seem just like, in general, to some of us, praise Yah. But I remember when we think about folly and then sobriety, praise Yah. See, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. Praise Yah. And the ancients understood this, and even people in older times in America understood this. But we have this modern day notion, and I believe it comes more from the 50s and 60s on up to today in modern psychology. But we have this idea that you have to give children things that are foolish, and things that are fun, things that are foolish. And if you don't, then you'll lose their interest. That they'll lose interest. You have to give them things that are just so fun and so entertaining. So what happens is that the folly that is in children in these modern times in America, they allow that folly that's in children to dictate how they deal with children and whatnot. I'm going to tell you a powerful testimony I heard. This is years ago. Because see, when I was a young person, I was in junior high and part of high school, I went to this Christian youth group. And now at the Christian youth group, it's like they tried very hard to be cool, to be cool and to be appealing to the young people. They tried very hard. They had a band, and they would play cool music and how we would do activities, fun activities, and like stuff like sock hops and apple bobs and just fun activities, mindless activities like that. And then, but what they would do is after the end of all those activities, they would step in and just say a few things about JC. Maybe even give a little testimony, maybe even give a little altar call or something. And I'll tell you what, that never did anything for me. And when I went to the youth groups, I just went for the girls. I just went because I wanted to try to pick up on some of the girls, that were there. I mean, I really wasn't interested in, hearing what they had to say. And when all the fun and games are over with and they would come and say their little spiel, I was just, okay, let me just wait and get this over with and whatnot so I can go, hang out with these girls again. But there was this evangelist, and this was maybe back in the 60s or something like that. And he had a youth group. It was a certain night of the week that he had a youth group, and the children started coming in larger numbers to this man's youth group. And other evangelists would ask them, man, what are you doing to get all these children? I mean, are you doing fun and games? And they're just, along the lines of just entertainment. Man, what are you doing? And he's saying, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just answering their questions out of the Bible. And that is what drew a lot of young people. Because it's like, man, I mean, here, you got to understand, especially young people that hit puberty age, 11, 12 years old on up, and they're in these youth groups, and, you want to bob for apples and, play grease watermelon and all that stuff. And, man, some girl, her daddy's feeling up her shirt. Some boy's masturbating. Don't know why he feels that way. I mean, people have issues. People want to know some things and whatnot. And it's like we're raising children to be children. We're not raising children to be adults. We have this idea, you can't put too much on them too soon and whatnot. And there are some things that children, teenagers, they need to know out of the scriptures. They need to be taught to straight about some things. Praise Yah. I'll tell you what, at those youth groups, they should have been hammering us about fornication every time we came. Just how wicked it is, how displeased Yah is with, how you got to keep yourself pure. And now if you're here to defile any of these young virgins, you have no business being here. Yah is not pleased with you. That's what they needed to hear. I never got the fear of Yah put in me in any of those youth groups. I came there full of lust. Never got the fear of Yah put in me. Praise Yah. But that's what they need to hear, things like that. And so this man was answering questions and answering some tough questions too out of the scriptures. And that's what caused young people to come in larger and larger numbers. Man, I got to hear this. Man, I want to hear about this. Praise Yah, but we've been deceived into believing that, we got to just have all this fun and this and that and blah, blah, blah. praise Yah. But when I was a child, I want to share something with you. That one of the things that we used to do, and this is wicked, Torah even talks along these lines, but when you're in grade school, in public school, you have what's called your special ed class. You have children that were born with defects or born retarded and whatnot, and so that with that, they look strange to you. Their faces may be distorted, or the way they walk, may be just distorted and whatnot. And so to a mind of a child is not really mature enough to process that. And so, some children tend to make fun of, other children that have those kind of disabilities or abnormalities. And I remember that, that's what I used to do, me and my friends, and we would kind of imitate some of these retarded children. And I remember when my mom would hear me do that, and I hated this so much, that my mom would tell me about a young man named Todd. Now, he was one of the special needs children that was, maybe about my age, but he was in the special ed class. And she would say, when you were born, Todd was being born, Todd's mother was actually in the same room with me, and you and Todd were born around the same time. And she said, you know what? You make fun of these, retarded children and whatnot. He said, you see how Todd is? That could have been you. That could have been you, and the way you are and all that. Now you're normal and everything. That could have been Todd. I said, that lady was in the same room as me, and we had our children at different times. That could have been you. And I hated that. I hated every time she said that. Why? Because it brought sobriety. See, I was just so mindless and, hey, look at that. But it brought me down to reality when she would bust me out like that. Hey, that could have been you. That could have been you, you see. And see, the thing is that is true. That is true. And so here's the deal, brothers and sisters. Here's the deal, all right, that when we talk about fun and folly and things that make us laugh and things that make children laugh, praise Yah. And see, that's why I'm glad that children are hearing this, praise Yah, because I want you to seriously consider this, praise Yah. Because see, they even make games to cater to this. Like I said, that older people understood that folly was bound up in children's hearts. So you don't just give them everything they want when they want it. Praise Yahuwah. But today they cater to that folly. And they cater to that folly for financial reasons. Praise Yah. Now, let me give you an example. All right. One of the games that cater to that. And it's a game that, a lot of us may be familiar with. That Speak Out game. All right. And if you're not familiar with that game, it's a game where you stick a thing in your mouth and it makes your mouth wide open and it sticks like that, and it looks funny and it's supposed to be kind of a laugh funny type of thing. Praise Yah. But consider this. It's like, people look funny. It kind of makes you laugh. It looks funny. All right. But would it be funny if, let's say you did that, and then let's say if you were stuck like that the rest of your life, your mouth is just wide open like that and your teeth are showing and you're stuck like that for the rest of your life. And you had to go through life day in, day out like that. Would that be funny? Would that be something to laugh at? Isn't that funny? But see, and this is real. This is real. I went to a camp meeting. In the mid-90s, and there was a brother there at this camp meeting, and he had what's called Wilson's disease. I don't know if you've ever heard. I had never heard of it before I met this brother. And apparently this brother was normal at one time, but something came on him, and he got this thing that was diagnosed as Wilson's disease, and he actually was going around. His mouth was like that. Like on that game. Your mouth is wide open, your teeth and gums are showing and all that. And he was like that 24/7, 365. And he went around like that, and he had kind of a shake to him like that. And that's just what he looked like, you see. And see, the scriptures talk about, cursed be the fruit of your womb and all of that. And how we have to understand that when people are like that, whether they're born like that or whether that like happens to them, okay, we have to understand that that's not Yah. I mean, that is, and I want to be careful when I say this too. Some people can get sensitive about this type of thing. Praise Yah. But that's the work of Hashatan. Now, that's not to say that a person who is afflicted in their body like that, even if they have like palsies or physical abnormalities, that's not to say they themselves are of the devil or they themselves are evil. It's not to say that at all. Your soul, your heart can be right with Yah, but you can be afflicted in your flesh. I mean, you could be a woman that has excessive menstrual bleeding and whatnot, and that's, that could be demonic. But you could be right with Yah. You could fear Yah. Nothing's wrong with you, but you need some like deliverance and healing when it comes to that physical infirmity in your flesh. You remember when Yahusha, that woman that was hunched over like that, and how that he rebuked that spirit. It said that woman had a spirit of infirmity on her, but he was rebuking the religious leaders because it was Shabbat. And they were being critical of him for, healing on Shabbat. And he said that, you hypocrites, you'll loose your ox to go to a watering on the Shabbat. Should not this daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound, be loose from this bond on the Shabbat? So he acknowledged Satan has bound this woman, but she's a daughter of Abraham, though. He didn't say she was wicked. Nothing wrong with her, but Satan has bound her. Satan has bound these people that have these like different abnormalities and disfigurements and whatnot. And I mean, these are people who Satan has bound in their flesh. Not saying they're evil, but in their flesh, Satan has bound them. And we got to call it like it is. Praise Yahuwah. And it's even Yahusha. When he went around casting out demons, he went around casting out lunatic demons and demons that were causing palsies. Palsies is when your arms or your legs or you're stuck in kind of a certain position and you kind of walk around. That's what's called a palsy. It's like an abnormality in your muscular function like that. You don't have full control over it. This was one of the demonic manifestations that Yahusha dealt with, and he cast spirits out of people. And that's how they were healed of these things. Healed of palsies, healed of lunatic demons. That's what makes your face, distorted and weird looking and whatnot. These were demons that Yahusha had cast out. Praise Yah. But let me circle back to, that game I had mentioned and that man, with that Wilson's disease, who was just like that all the time, I mean, it's like, can you imagine playing that game and he's sitting right there? Would it be funny? Would we, ha 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 ha, look at him. And not him, but I mean, whoever's doing the game and whatnot. It's like, see, we don't think about things like this when it comes to amusements, when it comes to fun and, different things like that. And even like taking, because you remember, I have said before, as far as that, that not taking folly pictures. And how we take pictures of ourselves with our face all distorted and whatnot. It's like, are we manifesting Yah or are we manifesting something that's of Hashatan? Like that. But see, we think it's funny. We think it's funny. We think it's fun like that. Praise Yahuwah. When we do things like that. But the reason why we think it is because we're not really thinking it through. We're not really thinking through what we're doing, but we're doing something because it feels good, because we feel like it's funny, like that. And brothers and sisters, that we as set apart people can't do that. Praise Yahuwah. We can't be that way. We have to set aside, we have to set apart the joy that Yah wants us to have from stuff like that, because we especially don't want to be laughing at things that are really, imitating manifestations of spirits and whatnot. I mean, do we want to act like we're cursed, or do we want to act like we're Baruch like that? That's what we should be manifesting. We should be manifesting the barakah and not manifesting the curse. Praise Yah. Because like I said, that's what we did when we were children. We would pretend like we were disfigured and messed up and goofy looking and all that, because it would make people laugh. Because it was funny, it would tickle our flesh, and we liked to make other people laugh, but it was amusement. Why? Because we didn't really think about what we were doing. We just did whatever felt good to us. Praise Yahuwah. So, I mean, these are a couple examples of what I'm talking about when I ask the question, are we having fun? Praise Yahuwah. Are we having fun? And now that you know what fun is, praise Yahuwah, then you know that, fun by its very nature is folly. That's the root of it. We can have a good time. We can rejoice. We can laugh. Praise Yahuwah. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be folly, because you can't have folly and wisdom at the same time. You just can't do it. Praise Yahuwah. And so, brothers and sisters, we want to do what's pleasing to Yah. We do. We want to do what is pleasing to Yah. And what I pray is that I conveyed this thing to you and really brought it in a different light than you're used to thinking about these things. Praise Yahuwah. And I really hope and pray that I have conveyed this thing in such a way that you can really see that Yah is speaking on this, that Yah is dealing with this. This is not just, something that I'm coming up with or some type of personal prejudice, of mine. No, I mean, this is the hand of Yah. Yah said, if we seek for wisdom like silver and gold, that's when we're going to get it. But part of the process of diligently seeking for wisdom like silver and gold is that we've got to reject that which is not wisdom. We've got to reject that which is contrary to wisdom. We've got to reject folly, brothers and sisters. And the thing is, it's like, all of us have been affected by this culture to some degree or another. Praise Yahuwah. And so this isn't a lesson of condemnation. This isn't a lesson of just putting people down, but this is a lesson of awareness. Just let us all be aware of, what we allow, what we allow in our own minds, and what we allow to cause us to rejoice or to cause us to laugh. Let us all just do some self-examination. Do some self-examination, because we want to be pleasing unto Yah. Praise Yahuwah, that we want the wisdom of Yah, and the beginning of the wisdom of Yah is the fear of Yah. And if we fear Yah, then we'll be genuinely concerned about what Yah thinks about our actions and what Yah thinks about what we're doing, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahuwah. So, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down with that. Like I said, the lesson was, are we having fun? And so if you've gone all the way through this lesson, then, you understand why I've asked that. Praise Yahuwah. Because we as Kodesh people, we've got to make that differentiation, brothers and sisters. We've got to make that distinction. We've got to be the salt of the earth. Praise Yahuwah. And manifest the real thing to people. Manifest, true joy to people as opposed to what they have. That what we have should be what they see that they need and not the other way around. Hallelujah. So with that, brothers and sisters, I will say, Shalom.